to ML Art Life. These are some of my top mixed media art supplies that I can't live without. And I use them for all different types of art and some of the cool mediums that I've come across that I've really loved using in my work, and some of the different techniques that you can do with the materials. And I wanted to share them today in case you were looking for some inspiration or some other ideas as to what you can use for mixed media specifically. And I probably have more that I didn't cover in this video, but these were the top things I could think of. So here are some examples of my favorite mixed media materials. And I will link all of these below in the description. Plaster of Paris strips are one of the supplies that I use a lot. And these are just the wrap strips. You can make these as well, but I don't usually make them because I find that to be a little tedious, and when I want to work on something, I just want to get to work. But this is the Craftsmart brand. There are other brands. That's just the one I currently have. Just plaster of Paris in a bucket, and you just mix this with water. Now this is great for molding things, and I'm using this flower mold. It's the silicone molds to create molds with. That's one of the things you can do with that specific plaster. There are the strips you can make, like I make these faces, and then I will sculpt on top. So that leads me to my next mixed media necessity is Fix-It Sculpt. And this is a resin clay, 2-part resin clay. So you would mix equal parts, these two together, and then you would create, it's a clay, but it becomes very hard. That is what I sculpted on top this cow skull with, is this resin clay. I used air dry clay and resined on top of it. That's another option, but this cuts out that second step of using the resin on top of the clay. And you can also use that resin clay, like these flowers. You can make all kinds of stuff with whatever you would make clay with, but it's hard, so you don't have to worry about it breaking or needing to put something over top of it, which I absolutely love. Here's another example of the resin clay. This is foam underneath. So I carved into the foam with a heat gun, which was very smelly, and I recommend doing outside, and wearing a mask. That's how I got the design on there. And then I used resin clay over top to create the raised area, painted over top. This is modeling paste. And what I do with this is stuck down with modeling paste. I used it for that. I used the modeling paste for these elevated areas as well. And then you can also use it for, like on this specific skull, I had one of the sides was a little different than the other, so I used some of the modeling paste to bulk up this side. So you can use it for those types of things where you need to add more volume. So use it to stick down my crackle paste, which is my other recommendation. And it looks like this. I have the golden brand, but the crackle paste needs something to stick onto. That's one of the things I learned with using it so much, is it will crack off. If you need to have a base for it, like a glue or something, and that's what this is. It's the crackle paste. You can see it cracks when it dries. So I use the modeling paste first in a thin layer, and then I put the crackle paste over top. There is one more piece that I have still. All the other ones I sold that have the crackle paste, but this one had really good cracking. It was like amazing cracking. And this is kind of a little bit of an intense piece, I would say, but it's called Chime Silent. And that's an example of really good cracking that you can get with this crackle paste. This is before I think I used a glue base, so I did have some cracking off of the crackle paste. As I said, you need to put something down first, but that might be why I got such great cracks. A few more staple things. So I use resin in my work. So you will need, if you want to use resin, you know, I use it for molding. I use it for molding molds. Here's an example of that. I was making resin wine stoppers. So resin, the 2-part resin, it looks like this, epoxy resin. I don't love working with it. I'm trying to cut back on it. It's very messy and it isn't great for you. And also I've had issues with it not being mixed properly. My fault, but just, you know, me not mixing it properly and it just not hardening. So that's been an issue, but I have used it in my work and I do use it. The lamp, so you could get a UV resin lamp like this and use the UV resin, which is a lot easier to work with, but it's better for smaller projects. So this is the resin hard, and you put this on and then you would put the lamp on top, and that is great for smaller projects. When I do my sculptural flowers with plaster, I do need to use the resin, and I brush that on after I use my plaster of Paris, and I will show an example of all of these things in the video. Here's one example of a flower I made with plaster of Paris, and then I put the resin over top. I also like plaster, Venetian plaster, which you can get at a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and it looks like this. And that is for texture, and I'll show you a piece that I used the Venetian plaster on to get texture, and it's great because you can also put like designs in it. Here is a painting I used Venetian plaster on, and that's what this textured area is, and I really like how this turned out. I just used a spatula to create the texture, but some other mixed media things that I'm into are this glaze. I've been using this antiquing glaze on top of my projects. It's an aged or distressed look afterwards, so I've been using that a lot. Then there's there's paper. That's from like a paper shredder. Here's another example of paper. The dress is paper on its side, so it sticks out. It has like dimension. And then the grass is paper as well. It depends on what you're working on. I mean, it depends on your mixed media style. Mine is more 3-dimensional, so I like to use these items because they work really well with that style specifically. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.